Jeff Paterson is standing by, and he is brought to you by the great folks over at GRETA, the home of our electric watch parties. GRETA is Canucks Army's spot to catch the game throughout the season, playoffs, and also our place to chill in the off season. Let's bring him in, Jeff Paterson of Rink Wide. Jeff, how are you today?
Good. I brought some reading material just in case the segment doesn't quite go as expected. Let me just take this and run with it for a quick sec. I don't know if people have ever seen hockey play-by-play by Jim Robson, the great Jim Robson, and it was wonderful to see him up on the Jumbotron the other night at Rogers Arena. It's always a treat to see him around the rink. So he wrote this book a while back. It's at least 20 years old, and I know that because it's my daughter's 20th birthday today. So Quads, if you want to bring her a cake, she'd be open to it. But yeah, big week of family birthdays. My mom's was on Friday, mine was Saturday, and my daughter is a Halloween baby. So what does the book have to do with any of that? Jim Robson wrote this book and basically told a story about each of the road cities around the NHL, and it included all sorts of game notes. Again, you can't really see all this stuff, but it's a cool book. I don't know if it's in circulation, but I've got a copy here. So some of the newer teams, and I know the Arizona Coyotes aren't necessarily new anymore, but at the time of the book, Arizona was one of the newer teams in the league. And so Jim got John Shorthouse to donate game notes and recollections about some of the early games in a few of the cities, and Arizona was one of them. So again, I'm going to hold this up here, and you can see Shorty's game notes. And
wow.
There's a little segment. Where am I here? I got to get my. You can't see it, and I keep moving.
Show and tell with Jeff Paterson. Right. Oh my goodness!
So the payoff to all of this is down on the left-hand side, and Shorty's got all of these notes of line combinations and special teams and everything else. And the final note says, Caitlin Nicole, 6 pounds, 4 ounces, 659. My daughter forever commemorated in print in this book. And I remember talking to Shorty because his wife at the time was expecting their first child. And so we were sort of going through this together. And he wanted to know. And so in one of the intermissions, I remember from the moment, I waited till the delivery was actually through and that my daughter was in the world. And then I picked up the phone and I gave Shorty a call and passed on the info. And he announced it on CKNW over the air. Her birth announcement was made that night, Halloween night of 2003. So there you go. There's my daughter / Canucks connection story of the day.
That's amazing. That is such a.
How are you going to follow that up for next week?
Yeah.
Though?
Holy smokes. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Jeff. See you later.
Jeff's daughter and Canucks connection for next week. That's going to be.
Wow.
Yeah. My son, I don't even know when his birthday is. No.
Jeff, yesterday at practice, Dakota Joshua was the extra.
Yeah.
Today, it looks like he's drawing back in from the sounds of Rick Tocchet saying that that Studnicka and Juleson were going to be healthy scratches. Are you surprised at all that we aren't going to see a little mix into the bottom six there to kind of grow some competition between these guys? Because I know you saw this yesterday as well. Quite a long conversation between Rick Tocchet and Dakota Joshua before practice as well.
Am I surprised? No, only because I think in sports so often you don't see a coach go away from a winning lineup, and the Canucks are winning for the most part. I know they lost in overtime the other night, but they played well. And I think what yesterday was essentially the message to Dakota Joshua. It was, just think about this. I've got other guys that I can put on that line. You're going to kind of be over here at practice at the very least. And you hope that the message is, like, if you don't pick up your play, then the next time around, this won't be a fire drill. You'll be the odd man out. But that's sort of my read on it, that the tough love came in practice, and now we'll see what kind of response. We know Tocchet's already, fired a few shots over the bow back in the preseason. Didn't like what he had seen from Dakota Joshua. Certainly that night in Calgary, nobody liked anything they saw that night in Calgary, the 10-0 shellacking. But there was a response from Joshua. Now, if you're a coach, you don't want to have to be pushing that button, every other week or even once a month. This is the NHL, and you want to believe that guys are going to battle for their spot in the lineup. And let's be honest, it has been pretty quiet. Joshua scored the 8th goal in an 8-1 win on opening night. There's not a ton of glory in that, but he did at least find the score sheet. But really, since then, there hasn't been a lot to his game. And I know that it may not be in his DNA to run guys over and sort of be that physical force that Tocchet wants him to be. But on this team and the way it's constructed, there aren't a lot of big bodies. He is one of the bigger bodies. It's the role that he has to play. And so it's in there. He's just got to find a way to bring it. So I think the message has been sent. Now let's see what the response looks like tonight.
Do you think there's anybody else on this team? Like, who's the next guy to get a message sent to them? Who's the next player that needs one?
Yeah, I mean, people would look and say, hey, Beauvillier has done nothing, and he hasn't offensively, but the coach has praised his performance, and I would agree. I think the last couple of games, he's been more noticeable. I think the first 4 games really was a struggle for Beauvillier, and it was a quiet preseason as well. So maybe it's an adjustment to bottom 6 for a guy that has primarily been a top 6, at least a middle 6 forward throughout his career. But I do think the effort level's been there and on the forecheck, generating a little bit of offense, baby steps. But, is there a message to be sent? The message, he's getting promoted. He's going to play with Suter and Garland on, a third line, and we'll see what that looks like. Nashville's not the biggest, meanest, roughest team in the league, and so I think you can get away with that sort of line against a team like the Nashville Predators. I'm not sure that you want to go with that kind of line against a handful of opponents around the National Hockey League. So, there were a bunch of guys in that group, but Nils Höglander seems to have responded, and I love the little bit of insight that Tocchet gave us yesterday about the work that he's done in the video room with the Twins. And people wonder, like, they see Daniel and Henrik out on the ice, and it's great to have Hall of Famers around this team, but that's a tangible takeaway of what they're doing to help some of these guys. And imagine just getting to spend video sessions with a couple of guys who have their plaques in the Hall of Fame. That's what an opportunity. So I'm sure it's not lost on Höglander. He looks like he's making the most of it. There is some internal competition. There's no doubt. The question is, when Teddy Blueger gets back, somebody's coming out of this lineup. Even if they're all playing well, Blueger's going to get his opportunity. So I'm really curious. But I asked Tocchet today. It was the same answer essentially as Friday, that any day now he's going to be on skates, but almost another week has gone by. And this really, it's going to turn into more than a month-long injury for Teddy Blueger, which is unfortunate for him. But when he gets the green light to get back in there, he's going to help the bottom 6. Certainly, he's going to help the penalty kill. Ilya Mikheyev is going to start to get some penalty kill time as well. So, I think that's encouraging that there are a few, pieces of the puzzle, as Tocchet likes to say, that aren't in place yet with this hockey team. And through all of it, they're 5-2-1.
Jeff, we're 8 games into the season now. We've seen some games from Tyler Myers where haven't been great. We've seen some games from Tyler Myers that make me want to put on his jersey and say how excellent he's been over the last 2. 8-game sample size. Do we just see this 10 times over as the season goes on, or do you think that there's actually going to be some sort of an adjustment and Myers is trying to make that? And we've seen that in the last 2 games. Where do you think it goes from here with Tyler Myers?
I think at this stage of his career, Chris, you just have to accept that there are going to be mistakes. And when you're 6'10" on skates, they're loud. People are drawn to him because he stands out in a crowd. And so, right or wrong, that's just the physics of the situation. He's a tall guy, and you can't look away. Now, I hope the mistakes aren't as loud as they were that night in Tampa, where they were so egregious and they wound up in the back of the net. And that's a caustic combination right there, that you could make the mistakes. They're not always going to wind up in opposition goals, but that night, they were dreadful mistakes. So lower the volume a little bit on the mistakes. You hope that the team around him plays with better structure and can insulate some of those mistakes, and ultimately that the goaltenders can be the last line of defense. But I just think at this stage of his career, this is who he is. He has some issues processing the speed of the game. And then in saying that, he makes the play to step up and, pick off a puck and go the other way and score shorthanded the other night. And it looked like a massive goal at the time to put the Canucks in front. So, I like the fact that he has 2 goals already on the season after he'd scored just 1 last year, but he's not here to generate a ton of offense. They've got other guys to do that. For Tyler Myers to be a successful night at the office, it's just kind of mitigate the mistakes, keep the volume down around your game. And so, we're probably looking at that what we've seen in these first 8, we're going to see some sort of replication as the season goes along. You just hope that the mistakes aren't as pronounced and as painful as they were that night at Amalie Arena.
Jeff, this weekend when you were pondering some things, in Paterson's point, you wrote about why the Canucks below average PK percentage doesn't tell the whole story. You went right after it. You took this topic on the day after they gave up those goals against the Rangers. Talk more about that.
I still, like a few days beyond that, I still kind of chuckle to myself when I think of who has scored the power play goals against the Vancouver Canucks this year. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Nikita Kucherov, Mika Zibanejad, Artemi Panarin, and Adam Fox. There's 7 of the 8. The other was Nick Paul. Like, we're talking about an absolute murderer's row of like the best of the best in the National Hockey League. Those guys are getting theirs, whether it's against the Canucks or anybody else. And so there's no shame in giving up a power play goal to those guys that I just rattled off. Like, that's what they do. The Oilers had a power play last year that historically good. The Rangers were in the top 10. Florida was in the top 10. Tampa was in the top 10 last year. So they were never getting out of this first 8-game segment unscathed. They just weren't. Like, and that has nothing to, like, even if they had been middle of the pack and we hadn't been talking about the penalty kill for years, those opponents, those players were going to light the Canucks up. And so the good news through all of this is last year it would have cost them games outright, but they won that game in Edmonton when they gave up a pair, and they got a single point the other night when they gave up 3. The Rangers scored 4 goals the other night, and on 3 of them, the Canucks had 3 players on the ice. Like, that's not going to happen very often. It's just the law of averages would tell you. So Saturday was a bit of an anomaly that, yes, they gave up 3 power play goals, but 2 of them are 5-on-3s. One's with Roenick flipping the puck over the glass. Again, that's not going to happen an awful lot. And too many men when you're shorthanded, you don't see that every day either. So I pointed in the column to some examples already where I think the power play has risen to the challenge and helped them, eke some victories across the finish line, something that we couldn't say about the penalty kill a year ago. And I mentioned Bluger and Mikheyev. Like, I think they're going to be added to this. That's just more insulation for the penalty kill. So, yeah, 74% doesn't look good. It kind of harkens back to what we've seen the last few years. But I don't know about you guys. It feels different when I watch these games. And again, in certain moments, like last week in Nashville, third period, they had to kill off those 2 late power plays. I think last year they would have been buried in that game, but penalty kill rose to the challenge. So, yes, 74% doesn't look good on paper, but it's not all doom and gloom. And I do think that it is going to hit its stride here. So I'm bullish on this penalty kill. That's 74%, which, there's no way I could have said that a year ago.
I think it still feels better than 60. I think that might be part of it as well. We're like, even though it's only 74, but you're right. Like, the 74 doesn't feel bad. I don't think that's so much as I joke about it. I don't think it's so much about how bad it was last year.
Well, and it was 80 until the Rangers put a dent in it. But again, 2 5-on-3s. Like, context matters here that, you play really good teams, and the Rangers are a hell of a team, and they, went and beat Winnipeg again. So they're up to 5 straight wins. The top end that they can roll out there on their power play, it's going to torch some teams. And it did on Saturday. But what I liked is ultimately it didn't cost the Canucks fully the full 2 points. They were still able to get something out of that hockey game.
Jeff got a question here in the chat from Karan, who asks, how does Nils Höglander get a chance in the top 6? What would be your answer there?
It's going to be difficult. You certainly don't wish injury upon anybody in the way that this team is going. Want to see them push it as far as they can. Injuries are going to happen. I mean, don't expect that everybody's going to play all 82. But, I think right now he's doing what he has to do in limited minutes and a limited role and just keep chipping away. And the fact that, he's proof that you can contribute. You can generate offense even from a spot lower in the lineup. I wonder, and we watched this at practice yesterday, where a guy like Pia Suter remains on that second unit power play only because he's a centerman. Like, that's the only redeeming quality right now offensively in Pia Suter's game to get him a spot on PP2. And there was Höglander standing out in the neutral zone, kind of looking forlorn. I have to think at some point, if he continues to play well, that they'll look at finding somebody else to be the center on that second unit, or just change on the fly and don't worry about faceoffs and that kind of stuff. But back to the question, I suppose guys can run cold at some point. Like, if PDG's play drops off, could you flip those 2 guys and bring some energy from Höglander? Possibly. He doesn't profile the same way, obviously, with size as Di Giuseppe, but I have a tough time seeing Höglander get an opportunity with Paterson and Kuzmenko anytime soon. I think they want to think, that Mikheyev's only going to get better. 4 games back after knee surgery. I don't think he's shown us the flashes of like flat out speed and beating guys with that speed. And, I think he's still working his way back, confidence, but I mean, he's looked good in the 4 games, and Paterson talked about what that speed has done to create some space for both him and Kuzmenko. So I think they're going to give that a long run. Sometimes it's just a numbers game. I'm not sure that I have an answer outside of an injury that's going to allow a guy like Höglander to make the jump higher in the lineup right here, right now. But if he's playing the way he is, what a bonus for the Vancouver Canucks to have that sort of player lower in their lineup. And I know last week we talked about him and I said, like, it's great that he's hustling and all that kind of stuff, but, I need to see some sort of bottom line. And then he went into Nashville. I think I was on with you guys last week before the Nashville game, went in and scored there. I love the fact that he's, middle of the ice, tough area, tip of the puck. And the hustle has been there throughout. And again, come back to the work he's doing with the Twins. But I like the fact that of those guys in the bottom six, now he's got something to show for his efforts. He just needs a little bit of company in that regard, get a few other guys to find the back of the net.
Absolutely. Karan, one of our regular texters, says, thanks for the answer, JPat. I appreciate it. Jeff, one answer I want from you. From your years traveling around, what's one meal? If I could just teleport you to that spot and you could have one meal from the road, what would it be from one of these great cities you got to travel to?
There are a lot of options. You can't go wrong in New York City. There's a billion options there. The one place that I didn't get a chance to go back to that I really wanted to was a rib joint in Dallas called Pecan Lodge. And write it down, because if you get to go on that trip to Dallas and Drance is on it, Drance has the coordinates. He was the one that led me to Pecan Lodge. It was lunch. We roll up. We got like an Uber to Pecan Lodge. Honest to God, people were lined up around the block. Like people say, oh, the place is lined up. No, they were lined up around the block. And this place they serve ribs like you have never seen. I'll date myself with the Flintstones reference, but like the ribs on the roof of Fred's car. Insane. Like I can't really even do it justice by describing. You can look it up. If you're ever there, definitely go. So Pecan Lodge in Dallas, without a doubt, was one that I loved so much that I wanted to get back, and then COVID hit and came off the road and I haven't traveled since. But if I ever find myself in Dallas, I definitely will be looking up Pecan Lodge. So make note of that one. And there are lots of others. There's so many great cities and so many great restaurants. But yeah, all these years later, that is definitely one that has stuck with me. I think I'm still full from eating lunch at Pecan Lodge.
I'm looking at the menu here. If you're still full, you might have had the trough.
Seriously,
like that is a menu item here on the Pecan Lodge. Wow,
they sell you lunch by weight, I believe.
Yeah,
is how. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you just load up.
What they do in the South so well, and this is when I saw this in Nashville. It's the sides, right? It's mac and cheese done the right way. It's cornbread done the right way. It's salad that has a quarter of the salad's about vegetables. The rest is just other stuff to fill it up. They do it right in the South down there, that's for sure. And this is what I had in Nashville that I loved was banana pudding. I've never really had banana pudding before. It was excellent with the little biscuits on top. Oh,
all right. Well,
my one quick Nashville, the first time I ever went, and it's an amazing city too. And I know lots of you guys were there for the draft, and but I went to some barbecue joint, and the special was like the 3-meat special, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in on a 3-meat special. The 3-meat special was certainly 1 meat too many, and arguably 2 meat. Like it was so much food. It was like a ridiculous amount of food, but it was so good. So I don't remember the name of that place, but the mountain of food that they served up was enough probably to feed a family. I was there on my own, ate well, probably didn't sleep well that night, but yeah, there is so much good food out there, no doubt.
All right. We're going to sing God Bless America to take us out here. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, hold on before Jeff. Jeff, appreciate you coming on here on the show. It's been a blast for me to be able to have you on as a guest.
That's right.
This will be my last spot with you, but not actually working with you because we got rink wide together later this week as the Canucks face San Jose. Me and Jeff going to be burning the midnight oil.
That's right.
Later this week, a 7:30 start.
Bringing in the big boy for a game against the Sharks. Only the best for a game against the Sharks, I think, is how we're selling that one.
Well, I guess I got to be positive about the Canucks. We set it up pretty well here with the Sharks on Thursday, so that should be good.
All right, guys.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.